Have you ever stopped to think about what it really means to be ready? You know, when things go sideways, not just getting through it, but actually coming out stronger.
Yeah, it's a tough question. You see these headlines, right? The wildfires, like in California, just massive destruction.
Exactly, tens of thousands of acres. Or you think about those drone attacks, maybe like Kiev experienced, hitting civilian areas. It feels far away until suddenly it doesn't.
It really forces you to face it. When the unthinkable happens, how resilient are we? Not just us as individuals, but, our towns, our country.
Right. And that's really why we're diving deep today into this whole idea of resilience. It's absolutely crucial for national security, for our own well-being, honestly. But it often gets pushed to the side.
It's way more than just bouncing back. That phrase doesn't quite capture it.
No, it's deeper. It's the ability to anticipate stuff, to withstand it, recover, adapt, and even bounce forward. That's the key bit, bouncing forward from major shocks.
So for this deep dive, we've been digging into a really insightful report from the Atlantic Council. They make a strong case for putting resilience first when thinking about security.
Yeah, and we've mixed that in with current geopolitical briefings, news from here in the U.S. and overseas, trying to get a full picture of what resilience actually looks like on the ground.
Our goal today really is to cut through some of the noise, pull out the important stuff, and figure out what genuine resilience involves. From big national policy down to you and me.
And this is where it starts getting really interesting, I think.
Definitely. Because usually when people talk national security, it's all about deterrence, diplomacy, military strength.
Hard power, intelligence capabilities.
That's the usual suspects. And look, those are absolutely vital, no question.
Couldn't agree more. But the last few years have really exposed some serious gaps, haven't they?
Big time. Pandemics, cyber attacks, climate disasters. They've shown that the traditional pillars, well, they're not enough on their own. Resilience has kind of been forced onto the agenda.
And you can see that shift pretty clearly in the official U.S. national security strategy. It's striking.
Yeah, tell us about those numbers.
Okay, so back in 2017, the word resilience appeared just 6 times. 6. Compare that to defense, 36 times.
Wow, big difference.
Huge. Now, fast forward to 2022. Resilience, 29 mentions. Defense, 31. It's almost neck and neck.
So that really shows a major rethink.
Right.
Democracies are realizing it's not just about stopping threats before they happen. It's also about being able to take a punch, endure it, and actually get stronger because of it. Anticipate, absorb, bounce forward.
So this term resilience power, what does the Atlantic Council actually mean by that?
Their definition is pretty comprehensive. It's the ability of individuals, societies, and systems to anticipate, withstand, recover from, adapt to, and bounce forward from shocks and disruptions.
Okay, so individuals, societies, and systems, it's layered.
Exactly. And their core argument is fascinating. They say this resilience is the bedrock. It's the foundation that holds up both a nation's hard power, its military muscle, and its soft power, its influence, its culture.
So without a resilient base, the rest is shaky.
That's the idea. In a real crisis, neither hard nor soft power can stand strong if the underlying society isn't resilient.
Right, okay. So to really get a handle on this, maybe looking at some real-world examples helps. Where do we see this in action?
Well, Ukraine's initial response to the invasion in February 2022 is a powerful, if stark, example. That morning in Kyiv, explosions, sirens, utter chaos.
Even though there were intelligence warnings floating around, for most people, life felt normal just days before.
Totally normal. Then, bam, unimaginable. But what happened next was, well, pretty remarkable from a resilience perspective.
You mean beyond just the military fighting back?
Oh, absolutely. Take someone like Yegor Arshev. He's a cybersecurity entrepreneur. He gets a call from the Ministry of Defense. Not an order, mind you, but basically a plea. Can you help us defend in cyberspace?
Wow. And what did he do?
He put out a call. And by that evening, thousands, literally thousands of IT professionals, developers, ethical hackers had signed up. They formed this volunteer IT army.
An IT army. Just like that.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Disrupting Russian military communications, mapping vulnerabilities. It was this massive, almost instant civilian-led digital defense.
Incredible. And that wasn't happening in isolation, was it?
Not at all. You saw international support pouring in, and it's really diverse. The UK sending anti-tank missiles, the US greenlighting anti-aircraft systems.
Estonia chipping in with cyber intel, Polish NGOs providing medical aid.
California sending satellite internet gear, Turkey supplying drones. It was a huge combined effort.
So Ukraine's defense wasn't just about soldiers and weapons. It was this. What did the report call it? A living system of resilience.
Exactly. Built on foresight from institutions, sure, but also the agility of local government, the quick thinking of communities, that international solidarity, and maybe most importantly, the sheer determination of ordinary people.
It really drives home the point that resilience isn't just something you scramble to build during a crisis.
No, it starts years before, in policy choices, in running drills, building trust between citizens and government, and really deep down in people's mindset.
Okay, so that's a crisis response. What about a longer-term example, something planned?
For that, you could look at London's Thames Barrier, that huge flood defense system.
Right, built after that awful North Sea flood back in '53.
Precisely. That flood killed over 300 people. So the barrier was built between 74 and 84. And what's amazing is how it stayed on track.
Oh, so?
Well, it was consistently funded and supported by different governments, Labor, Conservative. It didn't matter. They kept it going. It was sort of depoliticized.
That's rare for big infrastructure projects.
Very. And now it protects something like $321 billion worth of property. It shows how democracies can do long-term resilience planning, transparent governance, public accountability, adapting the plan over time. They prioritize the long-term safety over short-term political wins. Pretty impressive foresight.
It is. Okay, so we've seen national responses, big infrastructure. But you mentioned earlier the Atlantic Council definition includes individuals.
Yes, and this is crucial. We often focus on the big picture, the state, the systems. But the report, and common sense really, tells us the absolute bedrock is the individual, the human element.
Meaning,
for a nation to be truly resilient, its people need to be equipped. Psychologically, socially, economically, ready for shocks.
psychological resilience, that's like mental toughness.
Yeah, mental toughness, but also things like good problem-solving skills. Being able to regulate your emotions in a crisis. It's vital. And the good news is, it's not just something you have or don't have. It can be learned, cultivated.
How?
Through targeted support, training, interventions. There are initiatives like the Adrian Arsh National Security Resilience Initiative, ANSRI. They're really focused on practical ways to build this human resilience. Their whole philosophy is stronger individuals make stronger nations. It really does start with us.
That makes sense. And then building on the individual.
Comes the community. Strong communities, those local networks. They're often the first responders, aren't they?
Yeah.
Offering help, support, often long before official help arrives, or when it's just overwhelmed.
We definitely saw that during Hurricane Katrina back in 2005.
A stark example. In some areas where the official response struggled, you saw this incredible surge of community-led recovery.
I remember seeing stories like Matthew McConaughey out there rescuing people and pets.
Exactly. Or community groups just deciding, okay, we're rebuilding the school ourselves. And think about the Cajun Navy, just regular folks in their own boats, going out, pulling people from floodwaters.
It wasn't just about survival, was it? It built something else.
It really did. A powerful sense of self-reliance, community bonds, real empathy, people looking out for each other.
So individual strength, community networks. What about the role of, say, state and local government in fostering this?
That's becoming a bigger focus, too. There's been a definite shift, maybe highlighted by that executive order from President Trump back on March 18th, 2025.
What did that order emphasize?
It basically said that preparedness is best handled, owned, and managed at the state, local, and even individual levels. The idea was to kind of dial back FEMA's direct role and empower local leaders more.
To tailor things to their specific local needs.
Exactly. Give them more control over infrastructure choices, response plans, more decentralized, more self-reliant.
Are there examples where that approach is working well?
Ohio's approach to cybersecurity is a pretty good one. Back in 2022, Governor DeWine set up a cabinet-level cybersecurity advisor. Big step.
And didn't they create a volunteer force, too?
They did. The Ohio Cyber Reserve, the OACR, it's an all-volunteer civilian group that helps businesses, local governments, educates people, and responds to cyber threats.
So it's not just state employees, it's mobilizing citizens with skills.
Right. And they combine that with the Ohio Cyber Integration Center. It's this really robust, state-led strategy, blends education, creating tech jobs, economic development, all focused on cyber resilience. It's proactive.
But decentralization isn't always a silver bullet, is it?
Definitely not. The Texas power grid failure in 2021 is the cautionary tale everyone points to.
Right. Their grid is very decentralized, market-driven.
And famously independent from other states' grids. They prioritized keeping prices low over investing in, say, winterizing their equipment or basic maintenance.
And the result during that deep freeze was catastrophic.
Utterly.
Right.
4.5 million customers without power, over 200 people died. The estimated damages were up to $195 billion. And the grid itself came within minutes, literally 4.5 minutes of total collapse.
A complete blackout across the state.
Which would have taken weeks, maybe months, to recover from. So it's a stark reminder. Even if you champion local control in markets, you absolutely need strong oversight and smart, consistent investment in the basics to ensure resilience. You can't just assume it'll happen.
And local control has its limits too, right? Especially against sophisticated threats.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Local authorities might not have the intel access or the high-tech capabilities to counter things like, say, a foreign adversary quietly buying up land near a sensitive military base. That requires a different level of coordination.
Looking ahead, then, technology seems like a huge factor here, both good and bad.
Absolutely. A classic double-edged sword. Digital tech can boost resilience, massively better early warnings, faster coordination during a crisis, huge potential.
The vulnerabilities, they're huge too.
Enormous. We saw the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack in 2021, crippling fuel supplies on the East Coast.
And there are ongoing threats, like China's alleged Volt Typhoon operation, constantly poking at U.S. critical infrastructure, communications, energy, transport.
Right. And it's not just current tech. Think about future risks. Quantum computing potentially breaking all current encryption. Synthetic biology allowing engineered pathogens. AI driving autonomous weapons systems.
Scary stuff. And it's not just the high-tech attacks either.
No. Just the sheer volume of information and misinformation is a challenge. Social media during COVID, for example, sometimes made the response harder by spreading confusion or undermining trust in public health advice.
So resilience isn't just technical, it's also cognitive, like being able to sort through the noise.
Exactly. Building that critical thinking capacity in the population is becoming just as important as building better firewalls.
And all this is happening against a backdrop of a pretty tricky geopolitical landscape.
Increasingly tricky. Adversarial states are getting very good at exploiting divisions, not just within countries, but between allies. They use cyber attacks, economic pressure, sneaky influence campaigns.
Making collective resilience harder.
Much harder, especially when you factor in things like our dependence on global supply chains for essential stuff like critical minerals or semiconductors. One disruption can ripple outwards fast.
Which brings us back to things like military aid. You mentioned the U.S. aid to Ukraine earlier, $175 billion.
Yeah, a huge number. Important to note, though, that a lot of that was older American gear from reserve stockpiles, and much of the actual funding stays in the U.S., going to American defense companies to build replacements. So it supports the U.S. economy, too.
But even that aid flow isn't always smooth, is it? There was that brief pause under the Trump administration.
Right, a pause on some key aid, including air defense missiles, which was then lifted after some talks in Saudi Arabia in March 2025.
Yeah.
It just shows how these global partnerships and support systems need constant attention and recalibration to maintain that collective strength.
And the situation on the ground remains incredibly complex. Ukraine signaling openness to a ceasefire.
A 30-day ceasefire, potentially.
Yep.
But Russia's conditions are tough. Ukraine dropping its NATO ambitions, recognizing occupied land as Russian. And you've got hardliners in Russia openly saying any ceasefire just lets Ukraine rearm.
Plus, now reports of North Korean soldiers actually fighting alongside Russians.
Yeah, since November 2024 in Kursk Oblast. Reports of heavy casualties among them, too. Russia has acknowledged their help. It just adds another layer of complexity.
And this isn't the only hot spot demanding attention, obviously.
Not by a long shot.
Yeah.
You've got the U.S. drawn into the Israel-Iran conflict, headlines about a potential India-Pakistan conflict averted, China allegedly supplying Russia with drones. The world feels riskier.
And amidst all these external pressures, maintaining internal trust, especially in institutions, becomes even more critical, doesn't it?
Absolutely vital and challenging. You saw that scrutiny, especially from some right-wing circles, around the FBI DOJ review of Jeffrey Epstein's death back in July 2025.
The memo saying there was no secret client list, the jail video with that time jump.
Regardless of the facts or intent behind them, those things fueled a lot of conspiracy theories online. It just highlights how hard it is to maintain public trust when information and disinformation travel so fast and skepticism is so high.
So transparent institutions are key for resilience, because if that trust breaks down...
If trust erodes, it weakens our collective ability to face any challenge effectively. Doesn't matter if it's a hurricane, a cyber attack, or a global crisis. Perceived slip-ups, even small ones, can have big consequences for public confidence.
Okay, so wrapping this up, We've covered a lot of ground. It seems resilience really is this incredibly layered concept.
Totally. It's national policy, yes, but it's also state and local action, it's strong communities, and fundamentally it's about the preparedness and spirit of individuals.
Not just top-down mandates, but bottom-up strength.
And it's that continuous cycle. Anticipate, withstand, recover, adapt,
Yeah.
and hopefully bounce forward stronger.
So the final thought maybe for you listening is, what does this all mean in practice? In a world that seems full of shocks and disruptions, how do we make sure that foundation, that individual self-reliance, that local strength doesn't get weakened? Either by breaking apart into fragments or by losing faith in the very institutions and information sources that are supposed to help protect us.
Yeah, that's a big question. Definitely something worth mulling over.